Hey, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for the very first podcast of 2025. I had to start it out right. I had to start it in a big way. And I had to start it with my good friend, Liz Short. She is the CEO of Short Solutions. I'm going to let her tell you all about the consulting that they do over there. But please help me give a warm welcome to my great friend, Liz Short. Hey, Liz.
Hey, Kelly, thanks so much for having me. It's so exciting to kick off the new year over here with you.
One of the things I think that you and I are both so passionate about is raising female voices, especially in the mortgage industry.
Absolutely.
And, I reached out to you and I reached out to about 5 women and I was like, listen, please to me, I need to make sure that we are raising female voices this year, because even when I look back at my own podcast, I was like, you're part of the problem. So, let's jump off. Let's start with what it is that you do. And then I would actually love to go back to that exact topic.
I love it. I love it. Well, I am the CEO of Short Solutions. We are a company that help businesses and executives optimize their people, processes, and technology. That can mean everything from helping people source technology to help projects that have gone off the rails, let's say. The other side of it is we help executives and businesses take advantage of personal branding and video on social media as well too. After I kind of fell into, let's say, a lot of luck on LinkedIn with video, promoting my business. So it's kind of been a fun pivot that we've taken, and we help people, we like to say, get shit done with business and technology and video and personal branding as well too.
I love it. And it's funny because one would imagine that since you and I do something incredibly similar, and you and I are both head up an agency that does very similar things, you would think that we, I guess, according to the world or according to the mortgage world, would be competitors. And yet you and I both look at the world the same way. Would you agree with that?
I do. And I think you hit the nail on the head, especially when you said this industry, right? Because historically, this industry has been very competitive. I'm of a mindset that, first of all, there's more than enough challenges and problems to go around for all of us, right? But I think we're all better when we collaborate together. And I think the problems that we have in our industry, still ahead of us in 2025 and beyond, take us all coming together instead of working against each other. So one of the best things that I found in the 2.5, almost 3 years of having Short Solutions is finding other entrepreneurs, female entrepreneurs like you, and, building relationships, collaborating, figuring out how we can do business together. And I think that's for the good of the industry as a whole, and definitely needed.
It's such an interesting question, right? And I've gotten myself into a little bit of, not even trouble. I wouldn't even say it's trouble, but as you know, I'm really honest, as I know you're really honest, right? Yep. And it's interesting when it comes to sort of the way that female executives in mortgage, the way that we kind of have to claw a little bit more. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And it's fascinating to me to sort of look at like relationships like I have with you, direct competitors, and yet zero competition, sure. Super collaborative. Yep. But I do see sometimes where it seems to almost have worn on some female executives, how much they've had to sort of fight and scrap for like a little piece of their spot. Do you see that as well?
Yeah, I think we're definitely, in a time frame where your generation impacts your view of the struggles of women in the workforce, right? I think women who are 10 years younger than me in their mid-30s have had a much different experience than women 10 years older than me or 20 years older than me. And so I do think that historically, to be successful as a female in, I'm not even going to say mortgage, right? But in finance, in corporate, you've kind of had to separate yourself a bit. I don't think that was as true for me coming up. I do think that was true a little bit. And so I think that we have to figure out where that commonality lies, but also realize we don't have the same experiences, right? And that can be because of age differences, can be because of other discrepancies. You know, as a white woman, I have a lot of privilege that a lot of women of color don't have. And I think it's important just not to completely overlook what those experiences bring to the table. And again, how we can collaborate together with all of those varied experiences. But it can be a challenge sometimes, right? I think there's definitely a revolution that we're a part of in doing this versus it being the status quo today.
I find it so fascinating too, because we have, you know, for people like you and I, the concept of relationships yielding results is certainly not a new chapter of the book, right?
Correct.
But it didn't start feeling like an open conversation until a couple of years ago within the mortgage industry. But one of the things that I tell women all the time is no matter what the landscape looked like before, the concept of really everything moving forward is your ability to create and navigate really successful relationships. And humbly, I would suggest that is very much a female-led charge. You know,
Absolutely.
women are great at fostering relationships, and this really should be kind of a golden age for women in sales.
I agree. I think, you know, there's a lot of strengths that come more naturally to women that have proven time and time again, right, in leadership books, courses, studies, that lead to much more success overall of a team, of a company. And I think that, coupled with the opportunity that social media, platforms like LinkedIn, things like that bring, it's definitely a different world that we're in today. And I think that's super exciting.
Yeah, same. Did you have a female leader that mentored you in the business?
That's a really interesting question. I would say the answer to that is no. I would say I mostly had male mentors, but again, probably because there was a lack of female leadership when I was coming up in a lot of instances. I do have to say, in the middle of my career to later on, I have been very fortunate to have leaders or have friends, colleagues, peers that I would consider, you know, us both helping each other and mentoring each other. But early on, most of my mentors were men, because those were the folks that were in the leadership roles around me.
Yes, and you know, you and I crossed career paths for a while. We didn't work directly, but we worked, you know, at the same company.
Yeah.
I also did not have a female mentor. The reason I asked that question, honestly, is because I do want to have a bit of a challenge. Throw out a challenge for all of us, sort of in 2025. I'm gonna guess, without even asking, that you're a pretty good mentor to the people who come to you for mentorship.
I would like to think so.
And I want to just say that if you're a female in mortgage, I hope that at least a little bit of your time and effort and energy in 2025 could be just to take a look around your sphere and just say, like, who can I collaborate with, learn from, and hopefully mentor a little bit in this year? Not to be so, like, you know, like joining arms with the sisters or like whatever that is, right? And this is not, I feel called upon
For sure.
to drive this conversation forward.
Well,
And so, go ahead, friend.
No. I love that. As you can tell, I'm excited. I cut you off. I'm like, yes, let's do it. I think in general, there is a lack of mentorship of the next generation of leaders, period, right? I think that is a huge gap that we have within mortgage, especially housing, real estate, all of those things. But I would agree with you. And the studies show that there are less women getting into leadership at less numbers than men, not the trajectory that we want to see those lines going. And so I think it's really important for women to come forward and mentor other women and make sure that we do create those opportunities for success for the next generation.
Yeah, I absolutely love it.
So I'm up for the challenge, and let's get some accountability here. I love it. Let's get a little group of accountability, and let's do it.
We shouldn't even have opposite companies. We should just have one big group and just like really start doing it all, Liz.
I love it.
So shifting gears a little bit, right, to some of the things I think that we're both really passionate about, which is kind of showing people how to not be scared or intimidated by how much vulnerability it takes to put yourself out into the world. Is that a good way to say that?
Ooh, yes. And does it take a little bit of vulnerability? That is definitely a journey that I have been on over the past 2.5 years. It's not easy, right? It's really hard.
So speak to your journey with it a little bit, because in case people don't connect with you, if you're not connected with Liz on LinkedIn, you definitely have to follow her, because I think probably my favorite part about you is that you're very much like, here's me, like, you can love me, here I am, like, but I'm gonna be brave and I'm gonna do this and I'm gonna show you that it can be done. So talk a little bit about your journey.
Yeah. So, I mean, my background up until starting my company 2.5 years ago was not a journey on LinkedIn, on social media. I was not doing podcasts or anything like that. I was in the background running a division, doing a lot of things behind the scenes of a mortgage company. So I wasn't really in the limelight. And so when I decided to go out on my own with my co-founder, start Short Solutions, I realized, first of all, the power in LinkedIn, right? I thought LinkedIn at the time was just a place that you went to when you switched jobs to say, oh, I work here now, right? And I showed up to say, oh, I work here now, my own company, and was amazed at how different it was, right? And the conversations that were happening there. And so I am very lucky. My husband's background is video. He's a creative, and he's like, we can do this. We can do this. We can do videos on LinkedIn. And so we started October, I think, 2022. I decided to do some videos. I think I did 6 videos, October through December of 2022. And then starting January, 2 years ago, we started doing 2 videos a week to build business, to increase the ROI on my conferences and networking, and really to be able to stay top of mind with people and explain to them who I am and what we do. And we found tremendous success in doing that. I've not only got to really build my business 100% through either folks I meet on LinkedIn or folks I meet through folks I meet on LinkedIn, and also get to meet so many great people like you, Kelly. I mean, we didn't meet each other when we worked at the same company, right? We met each other through LinkedIn at a conference, thousands of miles away from where we both live as well. So I just think that's such a cool piece of what you're really able to do today with social media and platforms like LinkedIn.
LinkedIn has been one of those, I don't even know how aware you are sort of how I got here, right? But the base of this was 2010. I started one of the first social media companies in the country. And that was before anyone was using platforms really for business, right? I used to have to go in and convince companies that someday they would be on these platforms, and they just did not believe me. And what's crazy now, and I think about it, is like, I used to be the social media voice for an entire bank with little to no oversight whatsoever. And I'm like, oh my gosh, those were really the days. Because can you just imagine that right now? Like, no one would have that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But I think that's what's so interesting about the time that we're in, right? Because part of the reason that I had no social media presence and I wasn't online is because I worked for companies that were very strict about what you said and what you could say. And it was just much easier to, step back and just focus on the work, right? I think that probably hurt me in the long run and probably hurt my company as well too, because I think I'm pretty good on social media. I think I could have drawn a lot of attention and created some positive momentum. But again, it was just a different climate that we're in right now. And it's exciting. It's definitely still a minefield to walk through, but it is exciting to see how things are changing outside of mortgage, right? And then how mortgage is slowly starting to dip its toe into the water of understanding the benefits to them, right, of some of these, allowing some of their team to act as a liaison for them on social media, much more cost effective than a lot more traditional marketing methods as well too.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Well, I've just, from the early years been such a proponent of B2B marketing on LinkedIn. If you're B2B, and I mean, literally, I wish I was making this up. My first week in mortgage, I was still just a consultant for a branch, and I went in and I talked to them about LinkedIn, and I swear to you, they all but patted me on the head. I mean, it really was.
I believe it. I
And
believe
then,
it.
they're like, oh God, this is new little marketing girl. What's she going to be doing in this world? And then grown men the next week were like running down the hall to tell me that they got a recommendation on LinkedIn from somebody they didn't even know. And they had somebody who got a loan from it. And I'm like, wait, what happened? Wait, what happened to what happened to the old, thing? But even today, right? So here we are. It's 15 years later. I still don't see that much acclamation from a sales position in video, in thought leadership, and in connection on LinkedIn.
It's a huge gap. I talk to executives all the time about the power of, if you have a team under you that's trying to hire people and recruit people to work at your company, have one video that talks about why you started the company, what you're doing, your passion, right? I mean, you probably get pulled in a million interviews of people they want, right, to tell them that story, to get that passion, because no one's going to tell it like you. Having one video out there on LinkedIn just helps your recruiting so much more and helps your team recruit. And there's a million different opportunities like that. But so many people hide behind their LinkedIn, and the people that are out there doing video are the people that you connect to quicker. And I'm sure you feel the same way. I can walk into a mortgage room and I can have many more warm relationships because I've connected to these people on LinkedIn and I talk to them on video twice a week. So I at least show up in their feed every once in a while. You know what I mean?
Well, you said something before, which I think is so interesting. And did you happen to grow up Catholic by chance?
My mother's an ex-nun. Yes.
Oh, so yeah. Okay. So you very much understand kind of the analogy I'm about to use, right? Yeah. Like when you're Catholic, right? There's other religions, but what are they? Like, where do they, we don't even really know about them. We don't even really talk about it. It's like we're in the bubble. And, I felt a lot, I couldn't believe that sounds terrible, but I don't know how else to say it. But my resume for what I created at the company I worked at and you worked at, my resume was this incredible thing. And yet no one outside the bubble had ever even heard of me.
For sure. For sure.
And I was like, wait a second, like, how did I let this happen? I'm in social. I understand how this works. I understand marketing. Why do I not have a brand? Yeah. And it was really stunning to me when I realized that was the case. And so I was like, you know what, I'm going to do this differently. I'm going to show up. It's going to be this thing. But then it actually ended up that my mom got sick and I had to take care of her, or I got to take care of her for a year. But even that gap year where I wasn't on LinkedIn, right? So 2024, I was so like dialed in. But the impression that other people have is that I have been doing this consistently for a really long time. And I try to inspire them with the thought that if you really look at what I've done on LinkedIn, I've done it all since January of 2024. Now, of course, I had connections and all that, but not building of a brand. Yeah. And so, as somebody who built her brand in the last few years as well, when you're talking to someone about how to start, especially from a LinkedIn perspective, what do you tell them?
So a couple things, right? If we're talking specifically about video, it's not easy, right? And so my number one thing is don't do it alone. There's nothing harder than sitting in a room by yourself with a camera trying to think about what to say, right? So if that's the approach, stop it and really rethink how you're trying to do it, because I will tell you that is not how I was successful in it. I think a couple things in general. Number one, you have to really figure out what you're trying to do. Like, why are you doing this? What's the whole point, right? If you don't know why you're doing it, it's going to be hard to figure out what you want to talk about. And it's going to feel weird on why you're even showing up. So I think getting really clear on the why, who you're trying to connect to, and really understand that. Figure out, I usually pick about 3 things in general that I want to talk about at any given time, and kind of give yourself some guideposts around that. The second thing is, don't do it alone, like I said. So I have my husband help me with all of my recording, editing, everything like that. I have my business partner help me with all my content creation ideas, like what should we talk about? Okay, I run things by her. And so I think really making sure that you're strategic in how you're approaching it, if you are looking for success on the other side, is important. I think that the last thing I would say is you got to get comfortable with being uncomfortable, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I did not start out. I recorded a video today. I sat down, I did it in 2 takes just because I thought I could do it better the second time. That is not my experience 2 years ago, right? My experience 2 years ago was me fumbling and having to block off a lot of time and feeling super uncomfortable and not knowing what to say. I just started my YouTube journey the beginning of this year. And that feels so awkward to do compared to LinkedIn. So it was a reminder, even for myself, that you got to sit down, you got to get through the awkwardness of it, right? Long form content that's not scripted on YouTube is much different than what I do on LinkedIn, but you can't get comfortable, you can't get good at it until you just sit down and start doing it. And you don't have to post everything that you sit down and start doing, right? Like, get used to recording yourself, listen to yourself. No one likes the way they look. No one likes the way they sound. You just got to keep listening to it for it to get a little better when you're doing it long term.
I love that your advice is that, and my advice is the opposite. I'm like, just record it, never watch it, never listen to it. Because I feel like that's how people get in their heads. And no matter what, we can't really escape this personality type that of are in this industry, right? Because we're all salespeople, leaders, driven, type A, critical of ourselves, perfectionists, all these different things that we kind of all share. And I'm like, no, I totally understand where you're coming from. Maybe just never watch it.
Well, and I think, and again, that depends on what your why is as well, too, right? Like, if you're doing a one-time, very edited, highly produced video that other people are helping you with, I don't think you have to sit there and watch it time and time again. My videos are my marketing. I want to get better at it, right? I want to be more effective, which means I have to sit there and watch it so I know what I like and I don't like, and can make it even better and more engaging next time. So again, I think it's all about how you can get started and who you're working with. And again, don't do it alone. If you have someone my husband edits me, I trust him explicitly, right? He's not going to make me look like an idiot. And so who are those people that you trust? Who are those people that are your cheerleaders that you can bring in? A lot of times I tell people, if you have a teenager, you have a social media expert in your home.
Fair.
You bring the content, let them do all of the pieces that feel really weird to you. Even if it's on LinkedIn, they can learn LinkedIn. You know what I mean? And so really, who can you leverage to help you start, right? And just get out there, and then you can perfect, change, pivot based on kind of how that feels.
My 19-year-old was making fun of LinkedIn, right? Just making fun of it so hard, which honestly was super valid, because he's like, you guys share like this like super silly, like, oh, not to make fun of the mortgage industry, but like, I helped 18 families this month. And he's like, and then you all pig pile with your good jobs. And he's like, I don't understand the value. And I was like, but you and all of your friends have accounts right now. And he's like, well, yeah, for future, for networking and for, oh, okay. Well, yeah. So you're not making videos that are saying XYZ, but at the same time,
For sure.
So that kind of segues actually into something I would love to wrap up with, which is, what are the marketing things, marketing ideas, marketing concepts that I think belong maybe pre-2025, and what do we really want to see people bringing in to this new year, to their marketing strategy that is fresh and smart and going to get attention?
I would say 2 things are out for sure. I think if you want to truly connect with people on social media, you cannot outsource your content creation.
Mhm.
You have to be the person that is involved in it. That doesn't mean you do 100% of the things yourself, right? Like I said before, you can't set it and forget it. You can't just hire a company to slap a couple things up on your LinkedIn page about your programs, right? You have to connect. There has to be that authenticity. I think the other thing that's out, and this is not just in mortgage, but I think mortgage needs to pay attention. People do not connect with companies. They connect with people, and
Mhm.
then they connect with the companies that those people work through. And so mortgage people have to get comfortable with letting their employees help be the voice of the brand, help be the voice of the company, reach new top of funnel people, and through that messaging, get them in the door. I know in mortgage, and there's a lot of other industries, that there's a lot of things you can't talk about. In the vast realm of things you can talk about in the world, what you can't talk about is this big, right?
Right.
So how do we, and honestly, those are the most boring things to talk about. I don't even want you to talk about those things, right? And so how do we encourage our employees to be evangelists for our company and really take advantage of who people connect to, which is our people, right? Not our company page, not our product, not anything like that. I think those are my two big things that I'm super excited about.
Yeah, I definitely, oh, I mean, as you well know, I obviously very much agree. Kind of to go back to one of the things that you were talking about, especially from a recruiting perspective or giving people the tools to be the cheerleader or whatever that is.
Mhm.
Every person in your organization should have an intro video, a why I do what I do
Yep,
video, and a why I love this company video,
love it.
for no other reason than the fact that the company itself, if it had the majority of their sales and leadership do that, not only would we have content until the cows come home, we could weave that into the recruiting campaigns that we have, right? If you just think about every piece of this as a building block for your future marketing efforts,
Yep.
to your point, you could create an entire YouTube channel that's just about the why of your salespeople. You could edit that together for a really long start, and enable them and make them feel like they're okay to go out there and do it, and give them kind of the tools that they need. Or if you yourself are shy as a leader and you're not out there, you're not the Casey Crawford of the world, out there. I mean, Casey has a little bit of a leg up, and I can say that because we're friends. But honestly, if I was Casey, I too would make video every single moment of the day. But to be, to his people, right? He is, here I am. I'm putting myself out here. We are going to put video front and center. And if you work at Movement, we want you doing video.
Yep.
And if you look, there's probably 10 bazillion Movement videos in the world, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
And so, I think that's one. And then I would say, friend, I got to be honest with you. If I never again saw a mortgage company write, "Here we grow again,"
Sorry. Okay, that one got me. That's good. That's
an
good.
intro and new loan officer. It also really kind of drives me crazy when they're like, "Welcome back, this person," and I'm like, "Why'd they leave? Why are they back? What happened? I just want to know this story." I think we have to get away from the marketing of the hiring and the doing of business, right? Because if you think about another company that you would follow, right? So let's say I follow Nike, right? Nike's not out there like, "Hey, guess what? We hired a new person in Nebraska."
Yep.
They're out there saying like, this is our vibe, right? This is what we're putting out as a company. And the company sticks with their own brand, their own ideas, their own speaking on behalf of the companies, or could choose to repurpose,
Yep.
something that one of their creatives put out.
Absolutely.
And
Well,
go ahead, friend.
no. And it's just like, it's such a good example of like, we're very good at copying what other people do. Like, oh, other companies do this, I should do this. Like
Right.
the closing photo is another good example.
Yes.
I mean, again, I've done a lot of those in past lives as well too. But I think what it gets down to is you have to just let your team be creative and let them have the good ideas that they're going to have and use them as well too, right? Like, I think it's a great idea to highlight your employees, but maybe your employees that have been there a hot second,
Right.
And like share what they're working on, share how awesome they are, interview them on video. There's so many other opportunities that help your employee highlight themselves, because they're probably going to share it on their page, as well as create awesome content that people are going to be engaged with in a much more meaningful fashion, other than wondering what the story is on why someone left and came back.
I'm going to tell you, I'm going to send something to you after this, and I'm probably going to somehow get in trouble for this. But also, like, this is super important. For just a minute before you post anything, ask yourself who the audience for it is.
For sure.
Because if you're just constantly sort of posting things that are not meant to connect, they're just your own personal sort of regurgitated things, right? It's not going to be impactful, and you're not going to get any, you're not going to get back and forth on it. But I want to tell you about a true crime that I saw last week.
Okay.
A true crime I saw on social media. It literally was a loan officer who does pretty decently, but they put this graphic up and it said, wow, the landscape of the industry sure has changed in the last 5 years. In 2021, loan officers made $420,000. In 2022, $395,000. In 2023, $343,000. In 2024, $150,000, and projected for 2025 to make $93,000. And it's really just been a hard time for mortgage and and going on. And I'm like, I don't know who the audience for this was.
For sure.
Because what you look like when you do that is you look like you used to make way more money than any other person could have possibly dreamt of. And this year you might make the, average American salary for a 2-household family.
Sure.
And you're not understanding the way that's hitting your audience, because I don't think they thought about it.
No, I'm sure they were frustrated, right? And felt like it was good information to have. But again, I think that gets back to what we were talking about earlier. You got to be strategic. You got to have a plan. You can't just sit down in the morning and say, what am I going to say? Because that's when I think we kind of get a little bit off the rails, right? And are way more prone to maybe a little bit more feelings, and instead of maybe what I want our message to be. At the end of the day, like, I think you need to be authentic. Like, that's one of my biggest messages on LinkedIn, but like, it's also like professionally authentic, right? Like,
right.
It's not a place to go and whine. Like, if you know that person at work that's always whining, you're not like hanging out with them if you don't have to. It's the same thing on LinkedIn. So I love what you said. Like, think before you post, think before you write, think before you type. Who is this for? What am I trying to get across? And I think having a way clearer vision on that before you actually sit down to create is always going to help you hone in on that right track. Because it can get easy to get overwhelmed, right? Like, social media isn't a place where people just show up and go, oh my gosh, you're amazing, right? There's a lot of quietness there, it feels like sometimes. And so if you don't have a plan, if you don't have a strategy, it can get a little hard during parts. And I can see where people might lean into their feelings, but I'm a glass half full person as it is. That's just me naturally. But I just don't think there's a lot of benefits on negativity on LinkedIn, right? I try to stay positive while challenging people. I think those two things are true. As long as you're speaking to the people that you want to connect with, I think that's great.
It's so fascinating to hear you use the word challenge, right? Because you and I use that word in the same way, which is like a really good-hearted dare.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, dare you out of your comfort zone.
Yeah.
I put a video up a few weeks ago of me zero makeup on. And I just thought it'd be funny, because one of the biggest feedbacks I hear, right, it's like, well, yeah, but you always have makeup on, or you're always done up.
You look so nice, Kelly. You just always look so nice.
I look like a troll half the time. Like, you just don't see me during troll time. Like, I don't make videos during troll time, but I will. Because if it'll make you feel more comfortable to do it, if I put myself out there looking like a troll, it is what it is.
Well, we have a lot of challenges in mortgage that we have to get over, right? We've talked about marketing. I think there's a huge technology challenge that we're trying to work through. I think we have a lot of challenges with AI and what that and those regulations will mean to us for technology we already have in mortgage that we didn't used to consider AI. And so we have to lean into these things. We have to think differently. We have to do things differently because not everyone that's around today is still going to be around in 5 to 10 years. And I truly believe the people that win the game will figure out how to implement technology, social media, and I'll say it, AI eventually in the right ways in their business in order to meet the future consumer where they want to be met at, right? This is us catching up to the real world, not us blazing any trails at this point in time. But I mean, I'm right here kicking people, challenging them left and right because it's what we have to keep doing, even though it's really hard right now in the industry.
I actually spoke to someone last week. Someone reached out to me and recruited me on LinkedIn. This is something that I think you and I and people like us are going to experience throughout 2025, where we're going to be in a situation of when you're a subject matter expert in enough lanes that really make you an effective leader. And when you speak technology and marketing and sales and systems and process simultaneously, you're a different sort of person in this industry. And I know you know exactly what I'm talking about.
For sure.
Do you find yourself wondering what this year holds? Because like where we love being entrepreneurs, we also are very clear on the impact we could have at a very willing organization.
Oh, I mean, interesting question. I will say once every few months, I do still get a full-time job offer in some way, shape, or form. And I will tell you what I tell everybody else. The company that I have built allows me to serve you in a much better way than I could as a full-time employee within the organization, right? Because I can meet more needs, I can be more flexible, and I can be a long-term partner in your success instead of you now having to outbid my next full-time employer. So for me, it's exciting, right? Like, I mean, gosh, December 26th hit and everybody on LinkedIn got a new job, Kelly, it looks like in a lot of ways. I mean, I can't keep up with everybody. I'm like, I'm just sending messages. I'll talk to you in 90 days. I'll talk to you. Like, I know you're busy. Good luck. Get your head down. Figure out what it is. But I think that just shows that there's a lot of opportunity. And, I right now am really comfortable sitting in the role that I'm sitting, right? And being able to really collaborate with the right organizations in a deep, meaningful, long-term way that just allows me to bring more than just me, bring more than just my strengths to the table for them as well, too, which I think is exciting.
Yeah, the agency, the fractional model has been so fascinating. And you and I clearly see that, right? Because we know our all-in impact, our fractional impact. But one of the things I think that is, I love that I'm leaving it on this controversial. Kelly, here she comes. I don't know. I'm trying to figure out how to phrase it.
Oh gosh, this is going to be good.
If it runs through the third or fourth filter, we've got some really interesting stuff going on. I think one of the challenges of mortgage leadership is that it seems a lot of times like we don't have enough people in leadership who are able to talk across the lanes. And one of the most important roles that you can have is someone like us, where I consider us in so many ways translators.
Very much so. I like that.
we can translate the needs of sales into technology. We can build the process of sales into that technology. We understand the consumer journey and how to lay that on top of technology. We know how to report back to the C-suite the things they need to see in order to make strategic decisions. We know how to build the baseline of recruiting and onboarding and training so that we don't leave people behind. And I'm going to ask you, since of course this, I'm just posturing apparently, but in general, right? So I'm not going to ask you if you see that because I know that you do. But what do you think? How do we describe the value um, while simultaneously not making people feel intimidated by that knowledge, but instead appreciate the fact that the only reason you get this knowledge is because you got, you're a brick in a clothes dryer, right? You've had to learn on the fly and through difficult things. And do you sense that level of questioning around, like, why do we need this person who's a specialist? And then how do you approach not making people feel like, gosh, I don't know how to do these things, but I'm a leader here and it makes me feel weird?
I love this question. So I think whether we like it or not, we are in a different age in mortgage. And the things that have made us successful up until this point are not going to make us successful, some of them, on a go forward basis, right? And so we have created a process that is very people heavy, that is very siloed, and that really benefits keeping people in their one lane, and keeping them really relegated to that until you get pretty high up within the organization. I think that has now led to the epidemic that we see, right? Where we have a lot of leaders who know what they know, who have never implemented large scale change within their organization because they haven't had to up until this point, right? The larger technology has been around for so long, it was before them. And so I think that, and then it's the bubble problem, right? That you brought up. You can't see what's outside the bubble if you're only inside the bubble. So if you have a great organization where people never leave because you really build a great company culture and you grow your own people, well, then you have a problem of you're only growing to the extent that you can grow your own, right?
Right.
So I think there's a real benefit from bringing people in from the outside. And I think a lot of times we do that in hiring full-time employees, and we look for the opposite of what we have, and that doesn't always work, right? There's a lot of clash. But I think if you can bring someone in from the outside, like us, fractionally, right, in a way that allows us to work with your team to uncover strengths and weaknesses, to make sure that we have people in the right seats, to make sure that we identify where we need training, where we need leadership coaching, right? Help facilitate that as well too. Then you're coming in and working with the team instead of against them, right? You're talking to them and saying, what isn't working for you? Because there's a lot that's not working for your leadership team within the organization. You just don't have a process to come together and work through that as well too. So, we have our Get Shit Done product, which comes in and helps organizations figure out how they do large scale change and small projects more effectively, and teaches the organization and the people within it to run it, right? So we're not coming in and doing it for you. We are leveling up your team. We are helping your team grow. And I think that's the difference in the success that we find versus, let's say, a traditional consulting team coming in, talking to the people, only talking to senior management, and then giving a PowerPoint presentation at the end of the day. That's not what it's like working with our team, right? That's not what it's like at all. We are coming in and we are really partnering with your folks to help them and help them get the changes made that they need to see to make their job easier and their team's job easier. And so I think that just leads to a different level of success, and being able to talk to the right people about that. I found a lot of success in that as well too. But I think traditionally we've kind of, like, oh, these people are just watching you and then they're going to tell us what we can do better. Like that's leading to a lot of rub there, right? It's not about replacing your team. It's about how are we doing things better in a more efficient way so your team can be more effective in what they're doing.
Yeah, I love that. I love you saying it that way. I love the concept of like partnering with you to level up. I mean, it's
Yep.
exactly what fractional should do. It's exactly what we preach all the time, because it's
Yeah.
never about we know how to do it better. It's always about let us listen to how you do it, and let's figure out a way that we can collaboratively drive you towards success.
Absolutely. I always tell people, like, I have a lot of ideas, but if I just sat down from day one and told you how I think you should do something, nobody likes that, right? I
Yeah.
have to make sure that I understand exactly what's happening within your organization and then give you my recommendation on how we collaboratively work together to work through these problems and set you up for greater success on the other side.
I love it. Liz Short, you are on everything that, especially on LinkedIn. Everybody can follow you. You're such a wonderful, bright light to me. And I really appreciate you coming on Minds and Mortgage today.
Kelly, it's been so much fun. Thanks for having me. And as I like to say, let's get some shit done this year.
Amen, sister. Let's do it. All right. Bye.
Bye.